The forest stirred under the moon's silvery gaze, each shadow alive with secrets. Feet crunch against dried leaves, a rhythm both deliberate and hesitant. The pale light filters through twisted branches, illuminating the path ahead in fleeting glimpses. The forest holds no welcome. The wind seems to murmur, carrying voices both faint and familiar. A name drifts from the darkness, drawn out like a ghostly refrain. Each syllable claws at the edges of courage, leaving unease in its wake. Turn, back, or face what waits. The whispers swell, no longer shapeless but sharp, their tone teetering between warning and accusation. The path narrows. Ahead, a figure materializes, cloaked in shadows and silence. Their presence halts the steps of the wanderer. A voice, deep and melodic, cuts through the stillness. To dance with shadows is to call upon the past. The words twist in riddles, their meaning as veiled as the stranger's face. Before any response can form, the figure dissolves into the trees, leaving the air heavier than before. On the ground, something gleams faintly in the moonlight. A small amulet, its intricate carvings etched with purpose. A hand reaches for it, pausing just before contact, as if the object might bite. The touch brings a chill, not from the night, but from within. The faint pulse of the amulet matches the rhythm of a heartbeat, its glow almost alive. The symbols carved into its surface stir something buried, a flicker of recognition paired with a weight of dread. Fingers tighten around the artifact as memories crash in like an unbidden tide. Echoes of accusations, the cries of a betrayed village, the aftermath of disaster. Resolve hardens like iron under fire. The grip on the amulet steadies. The whispers and shadows of the forest are no match for the ache of redemption. With a steady breath, the journey continues, each step a challenge to the unseen forces ahead. The village buzzed with life, its people moving as one in preparation for the midnight harvest dance. Laughter mixed with the rhythmic beat of drums, and vibrant fabrics swayed in the breeze, strung across the square like streams of color. Carved masks and sacred artifacts lined the pathways, each piece carefully placed to honor the spirits. Tonight the spirits will judge, an elder murmured, her words carried on the air like a warning. Nearby, children gathered around the story fire, their eyes wide as the old ones spun tales of the dance. A night where the pure of heart earned blessings, but the unworthy invited curses. The hum of excitement faltered briefly as a pair of glances met across the square. She lingered, her eyes soft and hesitant. He held her gaze, his stance steady despite the weight of rejection that clung to him like an unwelcome shadow. "Your place is beside Kamau," a voice interrupted, firm and unyielding. The unspoken longing dissolved into duty as she turned away, her steps heavier than before. Under the shade of a baobab tree, Kamau's voice rang out, loud and confident. His hands gestured wildly as he recounted a tale of outwitting a lion, each detail more exaggerated than the last. The crowd chuckled, though their smiles hinted at doubt. Yet Kamau's gaze flicked toward the square, sharp and calculating. "He watches her too often," he muttered, his tone low and possessive. Near the edge of the village, a fire crackled as the elder storyteller's voice cut through the night. "Beware the old ways forgotten," she warned, her tone heavy with foreboding. "The spirits see what the eyes cannot. A betrayal will awaken what should remain buried." Her words rippled through the gathered villagers, sparking murmurs and uneasy glances. The whispers spread, quiet but insistent. The Nyoka Tribe, their rituals, their curses. The name carried weight, heavy with fear and mystery. Beyond the village, a quiet meeting unfolded. Under the guise of gathering herbs, she stepped deeper into the forest. He emerged from the shadows, cautious but resolute. "They don't trust." "You," she said, her voice firm but laced with worry. "But you have to stay. The truth must come to light." "They will never accept it," he replied, shaking his head. Yet his resolve wavered when her hand lingered on his arm, a silent plea to believe in something greater than rejection. Back in the square, Kamau watched from the shadows, his jaw tight and his fists clenched. "She's hiding something," he muttered, the suspicion in his voice growing darker. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the village grew quiet. The last rays of light painted the square in gold, and the hum of preparation gave way to the stillness of anticipation. Beneath the calm surface, tension churned like an approaching storm, unseen but undeniable. The air was thick with anticipation as the villagers worked tirelessly to finalize the preparations for the midnight harvest dance. Yet, beneath the hum of excitement lay a growing unease. Whispers passed from one group to another about strange signs, omens, some said. Morning revealed devastation in the fields. Farmers stood in stunned silence, staring at crops that had withered overnight. Their shouts of disbelief echoed through the village. "It's a curse!" one voice cried, and soon fear spread like wildfire. By midday, panic grew. Livestock vanished without a trace, their pens eerily empty. Shadows darted at the forest's edge, just beyond the reach of daylight. Children were kept indoors, and elders muttered prayers under their breath. In the quiet of his hut, Ejiro studied the amulet again. Its carvings pulsed faintly as though alive. He traced the unfamiliar symbols, his mind racing. Flashes of old stories filled his thoughts. Stories of the Nyoka Tribe, whose exile had left a dark mark on the land. Their insignia matched the carvings. The moon rose high as Ejiro slipped away from her family. She met Ejiro near the forest, her steps quick and purposeful. "We have to find the truth," she urged, her voice steady despite the danger. Together they ventured into the dense trees, guided only by instinct and the pale glow of the amulet. Deeper into the forest, they stumbled upon a shrine, long abandoned but heavy with an air of power. Its walls bore intricate carvings, depicting rituals and curses too ominous to misunderstand. "This is where it began," Ejiro murmured, his fingers brushing over the symbols. "The curse. It's tied to the dance." Back in the village, Kamau watched from a distance as Ejiro slipped back into her home. His jaw tightened, suspicion hardening into certainty. He began spreading his doubts. "Ejiro is cursed," he told the villagers. "He brings misfortune wherever he goes." His words found willing ears, sowing seeds of distrust. The shrine's carvings revealed more than Ejiro and Ejiro expected. Forbidden rituals of the Nyoka Tribe were tied to the midnight harvest dance. The festival was more than celebration. It was a test, a ceremony that demanded sacrifice to keep the spirits appeased. Kamau's patience snapped. He found Ejiro by the river and stepped into his path, his voice sharp and accusing. "You're the reason our crops are gone. Our animals! You're a curse!" The villagers, drawn by the commotion, gathered around. Ejiro held his ground, but his mind churned. Should he confront Kamau and risk alienating himself further, or remain silent and continue his search for the truth? His hand tightened around the amulet. Ejiro's family demanded answers. Her absences didn't go unnoticed, and her mother's voice trembled with concern. "You're bringing shame to us," she said. Ejiro's heart ached as she balanced the weight of her choices, her duty to her family or her belief in Ejoro's innocence. The villagers stood at the edge of unity, fear pulling them apart. Arguments erupted in the square, each voice louder than the last. Some blamed Ayo, others dismissed Kamau's claims, but none could ignore the tension that grew with every passing moment. The midnight harvest dance loomed closer, its shadows darker than ever. The sacred bonfire crackled fiercely, its flames reaching for the sky as villagers gathered around, their faces illuminated in the eerie glow. The midnight harvest dance had begun, but there was an undeniable tension in the air. The usual excitement felt distant, replaced by whispers of fear and uncertainty. The night, heavy with a tense moon, cast long shadows across the square. Kamau stepped forward, his posture tall, his voice booming over the murmurs of the crowd. "This man," he pointed directly at Ayo, his finger shaking with accusation, "is the cause of all our misfortune. Our crops are gone. Our animals are vanished. This is his doing." The villagers gasped, their eyes darting between Ayo and Kamau. Kamau's words planted seeds of doubt that had already been spreading. Some nodded, their faces drawn with worry. The elders, sitting in a half-circle around the fire, exchanged uneasy glances before one of them stood. "What Kamau speaks may be true. The land is angry, the spirits restless. We must act to save the village." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd as another elder rose. "The council has spoken. Ayo must leave this village. His presence brings only ruin. We must exile him to protect us all." Ejiro stood, her heart pounding. Her eyes locked onto Ayo, and without hesitation, she stepped forward. "No, this is not the truth," she declared, her voice shaking but strong. "We've seen the shrine. We've uncovered the truth. The curse does not come from Ayo. It comes from the forgotten rituals of the Nyoka tribe." The villagers fell silent. Ejiro's words cut through the tension, but fear still clung to the air. Before anyone could speak, a hooded figure stepped into the circle. The crowd recoiled, sensing something dark and unfamiliar. The figure's voice rang out like thunder. "You speak of truce, but you all are blind to the real betrayal. The Nyoka tribe was never lost. They have been here, among you, all along." The hooded figure raised their hand, pointing a finger toward Kamau. "This one has made a pact with them. A pact for power, for control over this village." The crowd shifted uncomfortably, their eyes now darting between Kamau and the mysterious figure. Kamau stood frozen, his face pale under the hooded figure's words. With a swift motion, the figure threw back their hood, revealing Kamau's own face. "I have waited long for this," Kamau's voice echoed. "The Nyoka tribe's power will be mine, and this village will bow before me." A gasp spread through the villagers. Kamau's hidden allegiance with the Nyoka tribe, their ancient power, now exposed. The ground trembled, as though the earth itself had heard the truth. From the cracks in the earth, ghostly figures rose, pale and translucent, their wails shaking, the bones of the living. The spirits swarmed the village, their forms wreathed in shadows, their cries deafening. Panic spread like wildfire. Villagers scrambled, shouting, some trying to flee, others struggling to fight back. But nothing could stop the rising tide of terror. Amid the chaos, Kamau took aim at Ayo. "It's too late for you," he sneered, his hands shaking with the power of his alliance. Ayo stood firm, heart racing. His eyes searched the chaos for a way to stop Kamau, to save the village. But Kamau was closing in. He moved swiftly, desperation creeping into his voice. "The amulet is the key, Kamau. You can't control it." Kamau's grip tightened on the weapon, his sneer deepening. "I will control it all," he roared, stepping closer, ready to strike. Cornered, Ayo's thoughts raced. The amulet pulsed in his hand. His only choice was to destroy it. shatter its power, end Kamau's plans once and for all. He slammed the amulet against the ground with all his might. A blinding burst of light exploded from the shattered pieces, filling the village with searing radiance. The spirits screamed as they were consumed by the light. Kamau stumbled back, shielding his eyes, but the force of the explosion was too much. The spirits dissipated, vanishing into the ether. Kamau collapsed to the ground, his power crumbling away. The village fell silent. The tremors stopped. As the light faded, the first rays of dawn began to touch the earth. The villagers stood in awe, fear still lingering but mixed with awe at the sight of the curse dissipating. Ejo, bruised and weary, slowly rose to his feet. His body ached, but his spirit burned with defiance. The villagers, once full of suspicion and fear, now saw the truth. He had saved them, not condemned them. "Thank you," an elder whispered, her voice full of respect. The village was quiet. The tension lifted, but the weight of the events hung heavy in the air. The sun rose fully, casting its golden light over the village. The midnight harvest dance had not gone as planned, but the village had been saved. And with the dawn, there was a new hope for Ejo, a chance for redemption, for a future not defined by betrayal and fear, but by courage and unity. The morning light filtered through the smoke-filled air, revealing the aftermath of the night's chaos. The village was eerily silent, the air thick with the scent of smoldering ruins. The villagers, once full of fear and confusion, now stood in stunned silence, unsure of what to feel. The spirits had vanished, their wailing no longer echoing in their ears, but the weight of the past night's events still clung to the village like a shadow. A faint haunting whisper danced through the air, barely audible, as though the spirits were slipping away into the wind. The land seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, and with it the villagers began to stir, some kneeling in prayer, others standing in reverence. The curse was gone, but the cost of freedom had been great. Kamau, his body battered and broken from the confrontation, limped through the trees, his mind burning with rage. The defeat was bitter, but the fire in his eyes spoke of revenge. "This is not over," he muttered through gritted teeth, disappearing into the shadows, vowing to return one day, to reclaim what he had lost. The village remained still, its people unsure of what was next. But then a figure emerged from the crowd. Ejo, once shunned and blamed, now stood before them, a hero in their eyes. The transformation was undeniable. He had fought for their lives, for their futures. The same villagers who had cast him aside now saw him as the protector they needed. His name, once whispered in suspicion, was now spoken with respect. An elder, her hands weathered with age and wisdom, stepped forward. Mama Oluchi, her face lined with years of experience, looked at Ejo with pride. "You have saved us all," she said, her voice steady and full of gratitude. "Your courage has freed this village. You have broken the curse that plagued us." Ejo bowed his head, humbled by her words. But deep inside, he knew that redemption came at a cost. The battle had taken much from him, his strength, his spirit, and his place in the village. But there was something more he needed to do. He took a deep breath and spoke with resolve. "I must leave. I cannot stay. The curse may have been broken, but the danger will return if I remain. The village must rebuild, and I cannot risk bringing the darkness back." A hush fell over the crowd as they absorbed his words. He had saved them, but now he was walking away. His decision was heavy, but the villagers understood. Some nodded, others looked at each other, unsure of what the future would hold without him. Ejiro stood off to the side, watching him. The bond they shared, though unspoken, was undeniable. She walked toward him, her heart full of both sadness and pride. "You've done what no one else could," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of their journey together. "You've given us a chance. I will make sure the village is safe, I promise." She pressed something into his hand, a small, simple token. It was a carved figure, symbolic of their bond and of the hope that had sparked between them. Ayo looked at the gift, then at Ejiro. Her eyes held the depth of everything they had faced together. "I won't forget you," Ayo said, his voice thick with emotion. "This is not goodbye, just a new beginning." Ejiro nodded, her eyes glistening. She understood. There was nothing left to say. Ayo turned towards the village gates, his steps steady, though his heart was heavy. The village, still scarred, would rebuild, but he would walk alone for now. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting its golden light on the horizon, a new day beginning. Behind him the villagers slowly started to gather, each of them carrying the weight of the night but also the strength to move forward. They had survived. Together, they would heal. Ayo did not look back. His path ahead was unclear, but it was his own to walk. With the hope of a brighter future in his heart, he took his first steps into the unknown, the wind at his back, and the promise of a new journey ahead. The village stood in the square once more, now rebuilt, though still scarred from the horrors of the past. The air was thick with a heavy silence as the villagers gathered. They stood together, but in their hearts they were changed, forever altered by the events that had unfolded. The earth beneath their feet felt different, as though it too carried the weight of the choices that had been made. An elder stepped forward. Her voice, though aged, carried the strength of wisdom. She looked at the people, her eyes soft yet filled with warning. "This is not just a gathering of survivors," she began, "but a gathering of those who have learned." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "We were blind, and our blindness led us to greed. Our greed brought us suffering. Do not forget, the curse came from betrayal, from selfishness. We sought power where it wasn't ours to claim, and that power corrupted our hearts. This village has suffered because of it." The villagers shifted uneasily, some with their heads bowed in shame, others looking to the ground as if the earth could take their guilt. But Mama Oluchi's words were not just a reprimand. They were a call to reflect, an invitation to learn and grow from the pain they had experienced. "Greed, my children, is a heavy price to pay," she continued, her voice quiet but firm. "It eats at the soul, and if not checked, it consumes everything around it. We must remember that what we take from the land, we must give back tenfold." Her gaze moved across the crowd, landing on the figure who stood alone, set apart from the others, yet somehow still within their circle. The one who had faced the darkest of trials and lived to speak of them. "Ayo's bravery has shown us what can be done when one faces the past, not with fear, but with courage," she said. "He took on the weight of our mistakes and broke the yo, chains that held us to a doomed future. We must honor his courage, and in doing so, we heal not only ourselves, but the land." The villagers nodded, understanding that redemption did not come easily, nor without sacrifice. Ayo had given his strength and his spirit to save them, and now it was their turn to honor that gift. As Mama Oluchi's words settled, a murmur began to rise within the crowd. The time had come to discuss what would become of their future. The tension between tradition and change had been there from the start, but now it was more pronounced than ever. "We must adapt," one voice called out, steady but filled with urgency. "If we stay bound by the old ways, the curse will return. We must learn from the world beyond, embrace change, and protect ourselves from what has passed." Another voice answered, firm and sure. "But to forget who we are would be to lose ourselves. The land speaks to us in ways that outsiders do not understand. If we forget our roots, what will we have left?" The debate spread through the crowd, voices rising and falling. The elders listened, their expressions unreadable, knowing that this conversation would shape the future of the village. A decision needed to be made, whether to adapt to the changing world or cling to traditions that had, for so long, kept the village grounded. Mama Oluchi raised her hand, silencing the voices. She nodded solemnly, acknowledging both sides of the argument. Change must come, but it must come with respect for what was, she said, her voice calm yet resonating with authority. The past holds the lessons we need to shape the future, but we must not let the weight of our ancestors' mistakes bind us forever. We must carry their wisdom, but also carry the strength to forge ahead. She turned to the villagers, her gaze sweeping over them, each face reflecting their hopes and fears for the future. And so, we pass on this story, a story of betrayal, of redemption, and of the choices we make. May it guide you in the years to come. You are the ones who will decide if this village thrives or falls. You hold the power, but remember, you must use it wisely. She took a deep breath, her voice softening. The storyteller's role is not just to speak of what was, but to teach what can be. You too must carry this story forward. The elders stood in quiet reverence, nodding in agreement. One by one, the villagers stood, their voices joining together in a chant, a new song that blended the past with the future, a promise of vigilance, unity, and hope. The chant rang out across the village, weaving a thread of connection between all who stood in the square. As the song echoed through the air, the villagers made their pledge to honor the lessons of the past, to respect the sacrifices that had been made, and to ensure that the curse would never return. They would guard their land, their future, and each other, knowing that their strength lay in their unity and their respect for the past. And so, the village moved forward, its heart still beating with the memories of its trials, but now stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever came next. The curse was behind them, but the story would live on, forever remembered, forever learned from.